Good evening, thanks for joining me on the first edition of Lynched. Tonight, 3 years on, what's changed? The good, the bad and the downright disgraceful. Is Christchurch really moving on, or are we getting far too much spin from those running our city? Lynched starts right now. Thanks for joining us in this week's Memo to Christchurch. It's hard to believe, 3 years on, Christchurch's history has changed forever. Many residents have managed to move on, but there are those who haven't been so lucky, and it saddens me to think that elderly people in this city may never ever get their insurance issues resolved, their houses fixed or their peace of mind restored in their final years. Even more shocking is that it seems several agencies set up to protect them appear to be failing them. Elderly residents in Christchurch feel they've had to put their lives on hold while they wait for quake repairs to even start. I truly hope they're not seen as a lesser priority given their age, but you can almost bet this mindset is rampant in their insurance industry. For example, 83-year-old Christchurch resident Jean Lockyer told Newstalk ZB she is still waiting for her house to be rebuilt despite making her insurance claim in September 2010. She says she's tired of hearing she isn't the only pebble on the beach. Jean Lockyer says she's had to put her life on hold, something she'd rather not be doing at her age. And you can understand that. Surely as a city, surely as a country, we can do better. I like to think that the majority of earthquake-related issues are behind us, but when you hear about more public meetings still being held over the treatment dished out to frustrated and extremely exhausted insurance customers, you know the reality is simply otherwise. And that's this week's Memo to Christchurch. So what does 3 years actually look like? Here's Marcus Gibbs.
The rebuild of New Zealand's second largest city has been fraught with controversy. Lives have been shattered, homes wrecked, and emotional turmoil continues to plague Christchurch. Roads are like roller coasters, and delays continue to frustrate already stressed out motorists. Christchurch has been invaded by a high-vis army of construction workers working to fix the damage. The $2.9 billion rebuild will see more than 650 kilometres of wastewater piping fixed by 2016. That's the length of State Highway 1 between Cheviot and Invercargill. It's a massive job. About 50% of the work should be finished by the end of the year, but it's tough going for Cantabrians. The thousands of road cones is a constant reminder that life in our city isn't normal. When they disappear, will normality return? That's the question. The Earthquake Recovery Minister called 2013 the year of the rebuild. Now that rebuild is finally taking shape. Local and international architects are working in overdrive to stamp their mark on Christchurch. A third of the city's heritage buildings have been lost, but in 50 to 100 years' time, their designs could represent Christchurch's new historic past. The new builders have copped a bit of flack. Too glassy, too boxy, or just ugly. But these designers argue that every generation has a new style of building. Fair enough. The government wants to make its blueprint a reality as soon as possible. Once complete, these projects should attract investors to the city, or at least that's the idea. The master plan for the city was released in July 2012. Work on the Avon River precinct has already started, and finally the public has something to smile about.
And it's brilliantly designed, well worked out. You've got that nice boardwalk that runs along the river there, sort of get up close and personal with it. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
9 other major projects are expected to start this year. After Sarah started controversially acquiring land, work on the eastern frame started this year. Patches of green are slowly appearing, like a quilt hugging the CBD. But littered throughout the central city are buildings, left untouched for 3 years. Is that good enough? Flamboyant property developer Anthony Goff would disagree.
Moved off the site and turned to the grass, whatever. Let's get realistic. There is not an endless pot of money. Let's pick the winners and let's go with those. Things like this need to be moved off the site and turn to the grass, whatever.
Sarah's spin doctors claim the many abandoned buildings are isolated cases involving complex insurance issues. But when do we draw the line? How long is too long to leave a building untouched? Should property owners be given a hurry up by the Earthquake Recovery Minister? Until these buildings are down or repaired, that's Anthony Goff's view. Other grand designs have been unveiled. The Emergency Services and Justice Precinct will be the largest multi-agency government co-location project in New Zealand's history. More than 2,000 people will work in or use the 40,000 square metre precinct daily. At the peak of construction, 500 people will be employed. A world-class convention centre will soon be built, with the aim of attracting business, events and conferences to Christchurch. Supported by hotels and working with facilities in other cities, this precinct should help grow the economic base of the region. Designers have until March to deliver proposals for the convention centre precinct. About 3/4 of the land has been purchased by the Crown, with the aim of clearing buildings by August. But nothing ever goes to plan. The Earthquake Recovery Minister has told CTV News he's disappointed with the lack of progress with the Innovation Precinct, blaming the hold-ups on another government department.
Absolutely dreadful, and the Innovation Precinct is being led by the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment, and they don't seem to be able to make much progress.
Christchurch's mayor has given her State of the City speech, causing controversy with her views on the rebuild. She called the former council irresponsible for signing a binding cost-sharing agreement. She also hinted that her relationship with the Earthquake Recovery Minister is strained. Perhaps teething problems, or perhaps a sign of things to come.
So will 2014 really be the year of the rebuild? Fronting up is Earthquake Recovery Minister Jerry Brownlee. He's in the studio. We speak to him next. Welcome back. Well, 3 years on, there's still plenty to do in the city and a lot to discuss. And joining me now is Earthquake Recovery Minister Jerry Brownlee. Hello, Minister.
Hi.
How do you seriously rate progress in the city 3 years on?
Well, to be honest, and perhaps you'd say it's predictable I'd say this, but I would say as expected and frankly a lot smoother than it might have been. This was a very big disaster and people are still, I think, struggling to understand how big that was.
When you say as expected, what do you mean?
Well, if you look at what we had to deal with at the time, there were people wringing their hands saying, look, exit the whole CBD, exit vast tracts of land, far more land than we've had to. And then there was all sorts of panics about how we were ever going to get on top of it, would there be enough workforce, etc., etc. So we've just tackled it progressively, looking at big issues, and I know that there are a lot of issues around the sides, but in general, I think we're going extremely well.
Do you feel
Can I make that point? Make the point. We're going well because of the work that's being done by literally thousands of people who are involved in the recovery, whether it's through Sarah, or for that matter the council, or through the insurance companies, or wherever, or the huge crew they've got in at EQC. Yep, there are complaints about all of them, but a massive army of people who are working very, very diligently to try and make progress, and I think it's working.
I want to talk about Sarah later, but let's just cover off insurance. A report released by insurance risk management company Marsh, and I quote, says Christchurch insurance companies are among the world's slowest to respond to a disaster. I mean, that's pretty predictable, isn't it? They'd say that.
I haven't seen it, but the headline sounds like they're a little bit out of touch.
This is a global insurance risk management company that compares all disasters globally.
That's right, but let's look at a few of those disasters globally. You tell me anywhere in the world where there's been the insurance penetration that we've got in Christchurch. We're about 99.5% insured in this country. Other countries aren't like that. We could be like Japan, where we simply, as a government, they decided they just give everybody $30,000, no insurance, goodbye, that's it. There's all these sort of different comparators that you've got to work with. The other thing that is really frustrating for me is the way in which we all tend to forget things. We had 2.5 years of very significant shaking, nearly 20 months before we went 3 months without a 3 on the Richter scale. It wasn't until we'd done that you really did see the trigger of the insurance activity because they didn't know what they were covering.
In July 2012, you said, and I quote, insurance companies need to step it up. You were referring to delays and the information that they were giving their customers. Have they stepped it up in your mind? Are they doing better now than they were in July 2012?
Yes, definitely. I think if you look at the levels of engagement from all the big companies, whether it's, at a stage in a process, but engagement certainly has occurred well up into the 95 percentile, and that's what we would expect at this point. So look, I'll tell you what, the one thing that is really also forgotten is you look at the big number, all these cases to settle. Watching your program tonight, there will be thousands of people out there who are in settlement who have to make pretty big decisions, either about the type of house they're going to rebuild, the type of repair they're going to have, whether or not they even want the same surface on their driveway, all that sort of thing is part of that process, people being able to make choice. And I think sometimes we dismiss that too easily.
Do you, though, as Earthquake Recovery Minister, feel you've had the best oversight over the private insurance companies following the quakes, or could you have done better?
Well, I've kept in touch with the private insurance companies, very, very regularly from the 7th of September, a few days out, where I gathered them all to have a talk about how we were going to tackle things at that point. I've also been quite active in making sure that the reinsurance companies throughout the world understood what we're doing here, made sure that they were connected to our scientific information and our processes so they could see that we are an insurable proposition. And what should not be forgotten in all this is that post February 22nd, it could easily have been an insurance position that we're not going to offer this insurance anymore. The projection is that we're going to have lots of these earthquakes over the next short while. We're not covering it. They didn't do that. They stayed with their clients. We were under pressure actually to get them to expand the market, let alone maintain it. And I think they have done reasonably well. And I think the oversight that we've managed to achieve has been about the right balance between the nationalisation of an industry and the private sector.
But perception is everything. There is the perception, though, out there that why the need for still more public meetings regarding Southern Insurance, for example. There's still that perception not enough is being done, though.
Let me just talk about that. And I'm not going to talk any further about Southern Response beyond this statement. I think the people who are out there with their concerns, publicly airing them, particularly the two who are the prominent leaders of that protest movement.
Name them.
No, I'm not going to name them. They know who they are. They should put their private personal insurance details on the table so all those who look at those people protesting, who no doubt have concerns, I'm not dismissing that at all, know exactly what they're dealing with, because it's too easy to come along and say, you're being unfair, I'm being mistreated.
But aren't you making that personal, though? They would claim they're helping the community of Christchurch move on. Aren't you making it a bit personal, though?
I'm just saying that I think that if you're going to go out and kick someone publicly for not doing something, you at least should be able to say what it is they haven't done. And that would require their individual personal insurance details being put on the table so people can see it.
Are you suggesting those community leaders are being too political? They've got something to achieve, and that's their profile as opposed to helping genuine earthquake insurance claimants. Is that what you're saying? I
think there are genuine earthquake claimants out there. You couldn't have this number of people making claims without having some who fall through the cracks or end up being treated in a way that's not totally appropriate. What I know is that the commitment inside Southern Response, remember that Southern Response was set up when an insurance company failed. AMI failed. People chose to insure with AMI. It failed. The government stepped in and picked up that liability. And Southern Insurance is a run-out insurer. So from our perspective, the government perspective, we want them to be fair to people, to honour those policies at a cost to every other taxpayer in New Zealand.
Answer this in a sentence for me. How would you describe the current state of the insurance industry in Christchurch today, right now?
Very strong. Can I qualify it? Because,
well, all right.
I'll qualify it by saying they're still there. They're still offering insurance and they know what our risk profile is. They're happy to do that because they see the way the rebuild's being constructed, and they also know that the risks that they factor in are being mitigated in a rebuild.
We need to take a short break. When we return, we'll talk about the housing crisis in Christchurch. Is there actually really one? That's next. welcome back to Lynched. Earthquake Recovery Minister Jerry Brownlee is back with me. Minister, do you accept we do have a housing crisis in the city? Your colleague Dr Nick Smith calls it a challenge. It's a crisis, isn't it?
No, he's right to say it's a challenge.
Well, what's the difference?
Well, I think a crisis means that there is an immediate problem that you must solve immediately. A challenge is that you have a problem that you have to solve over a period of time that's reasonable.
With the greatest respect, when you're looking at houses here, like a dump here for $650, and you're in Ireland, in fact, I mean, it's how are people supposed to purchase that or live in that, for example?
Well, that's a rental property that's up Memorial Avenue.
Well, that's what I mean.
And you've just described it as a dump. The point I'd make is that no one's actually renting it at the moment. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the Trade Me 2 rents
because it's probably too high.
But there are quite a large number that are in there at the present time. As far as I know, about 1,100. So the other point I'd make is that we have got a program through Housing New Zealand where we're building in excess of 350 houses per year for the next foreseeable future to try and alleviate problems. We've got the 2 blocks of land at Awatea, just out at Wigram. We would expect some 450 affordable homes to be built.
Is this near Hornby?
No, it's a wee way from Hornby. It's the back of the old Wigram Airbase.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because these houses are priced between $350,000 and $500,000. That doesn't sound affordable.
No, they're not. That's inside Wigram Skies, which is a big development that has absolutely raced away over the last couple of years. This is brand new, bare land, and we've said that we want developers to come to us and tell us how they can put affordable homes in there at a price point that's around that 350 mark.
Well, let me talk about the affordable homes that you and Dr Nick Smith announced a couple of weeks ago in Hornby. That's them.
Yeah.
275 affordable homes priced at $350,000 to $500,000. With the greatest respect, that doesn't sound very affordable to me.
Well, I don't know where the $500,000 came from, and if that's some of your research, well, look, I'm prepared to look into it, but that's not what we're intending.
That's what Dr Nick Smith said.
Well, okay, I'll accept that. But the point is that we've asked the private sector to come forward and say, look, we've put up the land. It's former New Zealand Transport Agency owned land now. It's available. We want it subdivided. We'd like it done at a density that does allow for those lower prices there without shirking on the quality, I've got to say, which is always a problem with that type of housing.
That's not your property by any chance, is it?
No, it's not. No, I just thought
you seemed to know a lot about it. I thought, is that one of your properties, Minister?
No, you
that
said
you've got for rent.
It's Ireland Electorate, and I.
But you know it.
I know the places in my electorate. I'm pretty sure that's more.
You're not having me on. That's not yours.
No, of course not. No.
Good. Just making sure. Does it though?
Where is it, and what do they want to sell for it?
Well, no, yeah, I bet. Does it concern you though, Minister, to hear stories about elderly people in this city still doing it tough? They can't find appropriate accommodation.
We've got a very, very big unit inside Sarah that is dedicated to trying to help people in those circumstances. And it does work with NGOs as well as agencies of state to try and place people wherever possible. There's been actually a couple of high-profile cases that I'm not going to go into where they have remained high-profile even though there had been perfectly reasonable solutions put to people. Sometimes you get that.
I want to talk about Leanne Dalzell's speech last week, the state of the city, because it's interesting, and I know you love it. She didn't hold back in her speech, did she?
I think the biggest problem with it was the attack on the people who are doing so much to try and help.
Well, hang
on,
wait a minute. She's made a point, and I quote. She said she's concerned the pending financial report will paint a dire picture for the council. If that is the case, Minister, how are we supposed to afford the anchor projects? Put up the rent? Put up the rates? Or sell the assets, or ask you for more money? What is the answer?
Well, you've just defined a problem and come up with a range of solutions without actually knowing whether or not that is the problem. And I think we should wait for Kortementha to report. They've also got another reporting house in there looking at what the state of their whole asset base is as well. So I think there's a big picture that Leanne is trying to get hold of, which is not an unreasonable thing. And this is what really has annoyed me about the last couple of days. When we put together the cost-sharing agreement, there was pressure, huge pressure, get on with it, do things. We had to work with the previous council. I don't think they have done a bad job. I think they did do the exercise they did. It took a long time, given that we've actually had, for example, the biggest chunk of the cost-sharing is the street works, the skirt program, the 3 waters and the carriageway. That's gone on ahead of actually agreeing where the payments were, and the government has stumped up with the money as it's been called for. But that's the biggest chunk of it. I don't think they've got that wrong. Some of the other stuff, it's best guess. Some of them might be actually overestimated.
Well, let's say the best guess estimate is the worst case scenario, and that the council doesn't, or the council thinks it can't afford the anchor projects. Are you going to show any flexibility at all in this?
Well, you're asking me to agree that there is a problem when at the moment there is no evidence that there is.
The mayor is indicating there's going to be a problem, so she said to me on the radio she doesn't want to over-exaggerate or underplay the problem in the city. She says it's pretty bad.
Well,
Council's got no money.
I'm disappointed to hear that, because I've made a great deal of effort to get alongside the new council. Christchurch residents changed that council very substantially, and I think all the difficulties that we've had in the past need to be put aside. I've wanted to do that for a long time. I've made real efforts to talk with the council about a range of issues. That at the moment has not been put on the table other than through the newspaper. And I think if we're going to have all this transparency and holding hands and the big love fest and everything else, don't do it through the newspaper, because it won't work and it doesn't serve the ratepayers well at all.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. She said, and I quote, she still doesn't feel that the council has forged a partnership with the government needed to achieve real progress. Had she expressed any of this concern to you prior to giving that speech?
Well, I think there's 2 points there. I'd like to talk about the last bit, last of all. The suggestion there's no partnership is a complete nonsense. You know, we have vast tracts of the city where residential occupation is no longer desirable. So the government has bought those homes to allow people to move on. We're still paying the rates on that property at full value. We've come to the party on the SCIRT program as first funder and guarantor all the way through, no questions asked, we're in there. We've run the EQC program at an expense of about $7 billion over what it can fund itself. In addition to that, we've picked up Southern Response right. as the AMI default insurer when AMI fell over, and in many countries, governments would have said, that's unfortunate, you're on your own. So I don't think we've been anything other than a good partner to the people of Christchurch and also to the City Council over the last few years. I think it's too easy just for people to pick out little bits and say this is a problem, this is symptomatic of the whole situation. It's far from it.
Earthquake Recovery Minister, appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Far too short.
I know. We didn't even cover off Sarah. We'll have you back next week.
What a success story.
Oh, really?
I believe so, yeah. Tell me how else would you have done it?
You were joking me.
How else would you have done it? Sorry, don't choke on your own opinions.
That is next week. Don't choke on my own opinions. Well, you are paid for.
You are.
I've got to go. So what do you make of what the Minister had to say? Post your feedback now on our Facebook page, facebook.com/LynchedInNZ.
It's a shame more people don't see this.
Be quiet, please. Finally tonight, the consultancy industry is alive and well at the council, isn't it? Ever wonder what a consultant actually does? Well, the website Urban Dictionary, it's good fun, look it up. It sums it up brilliantly. It says it's a self-proclaimed expert that extorts inflated fees from a company in return for a vague business advice. The consultant... do you agree with this?
Well, I'm thinking there's an opportunity.
Yeah, I know. The consultant detaches from its host at the exact moment its parasitic qualities are discovered by upper management using buzzwords and metaphors that appear like babble to most human beings. The consultant usually succeeds in gaining an assignment to fix a non-existing problem. So why is the cash-strapped council employing consultants? Shouldn't councillors be making decisions based on intelligence from managers? Perhaps councillors are all too aware of the unforgiving public, or perhaps the corporate culture is hard to break. The council is taking another look at its assets to squeeze more money out of them to pay for the rebuild. A sensible option, but surely one of the 3,000 staff members at council has the necessary skills to do this work, and if not, well, perhaps they could always employ another consultant. And don't forget on News Talk ZB tomorrow to join me for Angus Barge from SCIRT. He's in the studio to discuss progress being made on our roads in the city. We'll see you then, but from me, good night.